There exists a fundamental truth that most men spend their entire lives avoiding. The world does not reward weakness, hesitation, or self-doubt. It rewards clarity of purpose, decisive action, and the unwavering commitment to excellence that separates the exceptional from the forgettable. The art of dominance is not about cruelty or tyranny. It is about understanding the mechanics of power, influence, and human nature so thoroughly that you become immune to manipulation, resistant to failure, and architect of your own destiny. Consider the man who wakes each morning and immediately surrenders his power. He checks his phone, allowing others to set his agenda before his feet touch the ground. He reacts to the world rather than creating it. He seeks permission where none is needed and apologizes for taking up space. This man has already lost the day before it has begun. He has positioned himself as a follower in a world that reserves its greatest rewards for those who lead, even if they lead only themselves. The path to dominance begins with a recognition that terrifies most people. You are the primary obstacle to your own success. Not your circumstances, not your competitors, not the economy or your background or the unfairness of life. You, the weak version of yourself that accepts excuses, rationalizes failure, and clings to comfortable mediocrity because transformation requires violence against everything you currently are. This is the war that must be won first, the enemy that must be defeated completely. For only then does external dominance become not just possible, but inevitable. The concept of dominance itself must be properly understood before it can be wielded. In its truest form, dominance is the ability to control outcomes, influence perceptions, and direct the flow of events in your favor. It is the opposite of victimhood, the antithesis of passivity. A dominant individual does not wait for opportunities, he creates them. He does not hope for favorable conditions, he builds them. He does not pray for enemies to show mercy, he makes himself too formidable to attack. This manifesto is built on a singular premise. The man who destroys his weak self can never be destroyed by others. When you eliminate your own internal vulnerabilities, your need for approval, your fear of judgment, your addiction to comfort, your tolerance for your own excuses, you become anti-fragile. Criticism cannot wound you because you have already subjected yourself to harsher criticism. Failure cannot break you because you have already broken yourself and rebuilt something stronger. Adversaries cannot exploit weaknesses that you have already identified and eliminated. The transformation from weakness to dominance is not a gentle process of gradual improvement. It is a controlled demolition of everything soft, uncertain, and apologetic within you, followed by the methodical construction of something harder, clearer, and more dangerous to those who would seek to control you. This document outlines the ruthless strategies required for this transformation. Strategies that have been employed by history's most powerful individuals, often without their explicit acknowledgement. Most men seek power through external means, accumulating money, building networks, acquiring titles. These things have their place, but they are constructed on sand if the foundation of the self remains weak. True dominance flows from the inside out. It begins with the conquest of your own mind, the discipline of your own body, and the ruthless management of your own time and attention. Everything else is downstream from this internal war. The first principle of dominance is this: you must become unreactive. The world is designed to provoke reactions from you: anger, fear, desire, insecurity. Every advertisement, every social media post, every manipulative person you encounter is attempting to pull a reaction from you, like a puppet master pulls strings. The moment you react unconsciously, you have surrendered your power to whoever or whatever provoked the reaction. Dominance requires that you observe your own emotional responses with the detachment of a scientist, choosing your actions deliberately rather than being swept along by stimulus and response. Watch a truly powerful individual in any domain, business, politics, combat sports, chess, and you will notice an eerie calm. They process information quickly, but they do not react frantically. They face setbacks without visible distress. They receive insults without retaliating emotionally. This is not because they lack passion or feeling, but because they have trained themselves to route all emotional energy through the filter of strategic thinking. Every response is calculated. Every word is chosen. Every action serves a purpose beyond the immediate satisfaction of ego. The second principle is the understanding that perception shapes reality more than reality shapes perception. What you are matters less than what people believe you to be, and what they believe you to be is largely under your control if you understand the mechanics of reputation, framing, and consistent behavior. The dominant individual curates his image as carefully as a museum curator arranges a collection. Every interaction, every communication, every public action is an opportunity to reinforce the narrative of competence, reliability, and strength. This is not about deception. Lying about your capabilities will eventually be exposed and will destroy your reputation more thoroughly than honesty ever could. Rather, it is about emphasizing your strengths, downplaying your weaknesses, and ensuring that when people think of you, specific associations arise. Reliability, competence, success, strength. You achieve this through consistency. The man who sometimes delivers excellence and sometimes delivers mediocrity is remembered for his mediocrity. The man who consistently delivers solid work, even if never spectacular, builds a reputation as dependable. The man who consistently exceeds expectations becomes known as exceptional. Part 2. The 7 Ruthless Strategies. The transformation from ordinary to dominant requires specific, actionable strategies. These are not comfortable practices. They require sacrifice, discipline, and a willingness to prioritize long-term power over short-term comfort. They are ruthless because they demand that you act in ways that will make you unpopular, that will require you to disappoint people, that will force you to make decisions that serve your strategic interests rather than your immediate emotional needs. The first ruthless strategy is the strategic management of your attention and time with absolute mercilessness. Your attention is your most valuable resource, more precious than money, because it cannot be reclaimed once spent. Every minute you give to social media scrolling, to gossip, to entertainment that leaves you unchanged, to relationships that drain rather than energize, these are minutes permanently subtracted from your potential. The dominant individual conducts a ruthless audit of where his time goes and eliminates activities, people, and commitments that do not serve his strategic objectives. It requires disappointing people who have grown accustomed to your availability. It requires recognizing that every invitation, every request for your time, every opportunity that presents itself must pass through a filter. Does this advance my objectives, develop my capabilities, or connect me with individuals who can accelerate my progress? If the answer is no, the response must be no, regardless of how the refusal is received. You cannot build an empire while remaining accessible to everyone who wants a piece of your time. Consider the mathematics of attention. If you have 16 waking hours per day and you are serious about dominance in your field, you need at minimum 8 hours for deep work. Focused, uninterrupted engagement with the most important activities that build your skills and advance your projects. You need 2 hours for physical training and maintenance of your body. You need time for proper nutrition, for strategic thinking and planning, for building key relationships. This leaves almost no room for the casual conversations, the mindless entertainment, the social obligations that fill the average person's day. The ruthless management of time means accepting that you will miss parties, that you will be perceived as distant or obsessed, that you will sacrifice the comfortable mediocrity of fitting in for the lonely excellence of standing out. The second ruthless strategy involves the deliberate cultivation of skills that create asymmetric advantages. In any competitive domain, there are skills that everyone has and skills that very few possess. The dominant individual identifies the rare, valuable skills and becomes exceptional at them, even if developing these skills requires thousands of hours of deliberate practice. Most people compete in crowded spaces. There are millions who can write adequately, code competently, or manage projects satisfactorily. There are far fewer who can write with genuine insight and style, who can architect complex systems, who can lead teams through genuinely difficult challenges. Dominance comes from being in the top 1% of multiple skills simultaneously. You do not need to be the best in the world at anything. But if you are in the top 10% of 3 different valuable skills, you occupy a space that very few others can occupy. A person who is a strong writer, a capable data analyst, and an excellent public speaker is rare and valuable. A person who combines technical expertise with business acumen and leadership ability becomes nearly irreplaceable. The ruthless aspect of this strategy is that developing genuine expertise requires sacrificing breadth for depth, saying no to dabbling in favor of mastery, and enduring the years of focused practice that most people are unwilling to commit to. The third ruthless strategy is the construction of optionality and the deliberate avoidance of dependence. Every dependency is a vulnerability. Every single source of income, every relationship you cannot afford to lose, every situation where you have no alternative, these are points where you can be controlled, manipulated, or destroyed. The dominant individual builds multiple streams of income, maintains relationships across different networks, and always ensures he has alternatives to any current situation. This requires sacrifice in the short term. Maintaining optionality means not extracting maximum value from any single opportunity, instead spreading resources and attention across multiple possibilities. Most people commit entirely to a single employer, a single career path, a single approach to life. They become specialists in exactly one thing, leaving them vulnerable to changes in the market, the economy, or their industry. The ruthless strategy is to always be building the next thing while optimizing the current thing. To always be developing the skills and relationships that would allow you to walk away from your current situation without catastrophic consequences. This means living below your means so that you are not trapped by lifestyle inflation. It means continuously learning and adapting so that your skills remain relevant. It means cultivating relationships not out of immediate need but as long-term investments in your network and optionality. The fourth ruthless strategy involves the systematic study and exploitation of human psychology, particularly the predictable patterns of behavior that most people exhibit unconsciously. Dominance in social and professional contexts requires understanding what motivates people, what threatens them, what they value, and how to provide those things in ways that create loyalty and obligation. This is not manipulation in the toxic sense. It is the recognition that influence is a skill that can be learned and practiced. People are driven by a limited set of core motivations: the desire for status, the need for security, the fear of missing out, the craving for validation, the pursuit of pleasure, the avoidance of pain. When you understand which of these motivations drives a particular individual, you can frame your requests, your offers, and your interactions in ways that align with what they want. The person who desires status can be influenced through public recognition. The person who craves security can be influenced through guarantees and stability. The person who fears missing out can be influenced through scarcity and exclusivity. The ruthless element here is the willingness to see people clearly rather than as you wish they were. Most individuals operate with a naive view of human nature, believing that everyone is fundamentally good, rational, and fair. The dominant individual recognizes that people are complex, often irrational, frequently self-interested, and sometimes actively malicious. This clarity allows you to protect yourself, to identify who can be trusted and who must be managed, to understand when someone's professed motivations differ from their actual motivations. You must study body language, tonality, patterns of behavior over time. You must become a student of what people do rather than what they say, because behavior reveals truth where words often obscure it. The fifth ruthless strategy is the deliberate construction of personal brand and reputation through consistent action and strategic positioning. In a world of unlimited information and short attention spans, you are what you are known for. If you are known for nothing, you are invisible. If you are known for the wrong things, you are worse than invisible. You are handicapped by negative associations. The dominant individual takes control of his narrative, deciding what he will be known for, and then executing consistently to make that reputation reality. This requires identifying what valuable thing you can do better than most people, then doing it publicly and consistently until you become associated with that capability. If you can analyze complex situations and provide clarity, you must do this regularly in formats that people see. Writing, speaking, consulting. If you can build things, you must build visibly, documenting your process and sharing your results. If you can solve specific problems, you must become the go-to person for those problems by solving them repeatedly and making sure the solutions are attributed to you. The ruthless part is the commitment to consistency over years, not weeks or months. Reputation is not built by a single impressive achievement, but by sustained demonstration of capability. You must show up when you do not feel like it, produce when you are not inspired, maintain quality when it would be easier to coast. You must also be willing to turn down opportunities that do not align with the reputation you are building, even lucrative ones, because every action either reinforces or dilutes your brand. The sixth ruthless strategy involves the weaponization of your own discomfort and the deliberate pursuit of situations that test and expand your capabilities. Most people organize their lives to minimize discomfort, surrounding themselves with familiar people, comfortable routines, and challenges they know they can handle. This creates stagnation disguised as stability. The dominant individual does the opposite. He seeks out discomfort systematically because growth lives on the other side of comfort. This means deliberately taking on projects that are slightly beyond your current capability. It means having difficult conversations rather than avoiding them. It means physical training that pushes you to your limits rather than gentle exercise that makes you feel good. It means putting yourself in social situations where you are not the expert, not the highest status person, not the center of attention, so that you can learn from those who are ahead of you. Every time you choose comfort, you choose stagnation. Every time you choose challenge, you choose growth. The ruthless element is the requirement to override your natural inclinations constantly. Your brain is wired to conserve energy and avoid danger, which in the modern world translates to avoiding anything that might result in embarrassment, failure, or discomfort. Dominance requires training yourself to move toward these things deliberately, to rewire your nervous system so that you find satisfaction in the challenge rather than the ease. This is done through repeated exposure. Each time you do something difficult and survive, you build evidence that you are capable of hard things, and this evidence accumulates into genuine confidence that cannot be shaken by others' opinions. The seventh ruthless strategy is the practice of strategic detachment and emotional independence. The person who needs validation, approval, or emotional support from others is controllable through the withdrawal of those things. The person who has trained himself to derive satisfaction from his own standards, his own judgment, and his own assessment of his progress is immune to this form of control. This does not mean becoming cold or unfeeling. It means ensuring that your emotional state is not at the mercy of others' moods, opinions, or behaviors. This is perhaps the most difficult strategy because humans are social creatures wired for connection and approval. The need to belong, to be liked, to be validated by the group is written into your DNA. Overriding this requires conscious effort and practice. You must learn to sit with the discomfort of others' disapproval without immediately moving to fix it. You must develop the capacity to make decisions that you know will be unpopular and stand by them without needing to justify yourself. You must build an internal scorecard of what matters rather than constantly checking external metrics of success. The practice involves small exercises that build this capacity over time. Express an unpopular opinion and resist the urge to walk it back when challenged. Make a decision based on your own judgment and stick with it even when others question it. Spend time alone without seeking connection or entertainment, learning to be comfortable in your own company. Gradually, you build a fortress of self-validation that external criticism cannot penetrate, not because you are arrogant, but because you have done the work to know yourself, trust your judgment, and base your self-worth on your own standards rather than others' reactions. These 7 strategies are ruthless because they require you to act against your conditioning, your comfort, and often your immediate self-interest. They require you to make choices that will make you unpopular, that will separate you from the herd, that will mark you as different in ways that some will find threatening. But dominance is not achieved by following the path that everyone else walks. It is achieved by having the clarity to see what actually works, the courage to implement it regardless of social consequences, and the discipline to maintain these practices even when results are not immediately visible. Part 3. The destruction and rebirth of the self. The ultimate form of dominance is not power over others, but complete sovereignty over yourself. And this sovereignty is only achieved through the systematic destruction of everything weak, uncertain, and compromising within your own character. The man who destroys his weak self can never be destroyed by others because he has already done to himself what his worst enemy might dream of doing to him. He has confronted his deepest fears, acknowledged his most embarrassing weaknesses, and ruthlessly eliminated the habits, beliefs, and patterns that keep him small. This process of self-destruction is not metaphorical. It is a literal dismantling of the identity you have constructed throughout your life, most of which was not chosen consciously but rather absorbed from parents, peers, culture, and circumstance. You are walking around with beliefs about yourself that you never examined, beliefs about what you are capable of, what you deserve, what is possible for someone like you. Most of these beliefs are limiting fictions, comfortable stories you tell yourself to justify why you have not achieved more, risked more, become more. The destruction begins with brutal honesty. You must conduct an inventory of yourself with the detachment of an outside observer, cataloging your actual behaviors rather than your intended behaviors. How do you actually spend your time? What do you actually do when faced with difficulty? What patterns repeat in your relationships, your career, your health? Most people, when they conduct this inventory honestly, discover a massive gap between who they think they are and who they actually are. They believe they are disciplined, but their behavior reveals constant surrender to impulse. They believe they are confident, but their actions reveal constant seeking of permission and validation. This gap is uncomfortable to acknowledge, which is why most people never do it. They live in a fog of self-deception, telling themselves stories that protect their ego while their actual life remains mediocre. The dominant individual has the courage to see himself clearly, to write down the unflattering truth, to acknowledge every excuse, every rationalization, every way he has betrayed his own potential. This is the first violence of self-destruction, the violence of truth. Once you see clearly what you actually are, you must make a decision. Which parts of this person do you keep, and which parts must die? Not everything about you is weak or problematic. You likely have genuine strengths, real capabilities, authentic virtues. These are identified and reinforced. But you also have patterns that must be eliminated completely. Perhaps you are conflict avoidant, always choosing peace over truth, always accommodating rather than standing your ground. This pattern must die. Perhaps you are excessively concerned with others' opinions, constantly modulating your behavior based on who is watching. This insecurity must die. Perhaps you have grown comfortable with being mediocre in some domain, telling yourself it does not matter while secretly knowing you have settled. This acceptance of mediocrity must die. The death of these patterns is not achieved through wanting them gone or understanding intellectually that they limit you. It is achieved through creating conditions that make the old patterns impossible to maintain. If you are conflict avoidant, you must force yourself into situations that require you to stand your ground or fail completely. If you are overly concerned with others' opinions, you must deliberately take positions you know will be unpopular and maintain them without justification. If you have accepted mediocrity, you must commit publicly to a standard of excellence that would embarrass you to fall short of. This is the second violence of self-destruction. The violence of forcing yourself into situations where the old you cannot survive. You are deliberately creating pressure that will crush your weak patterns, not eventually, but immediately. Most personal development focuses on gentle, gradual change. This is appropriate for minor adjustments, but for fundamental transformation, for the destruction of deeply rooted patterns, you need cataclysmic pressure. You need to burn the ships, cut off the retreat, make the old way of being impossible. Consider the man who has been overweight for years, who has tried countless diets and exercise programs, always falling back into old patterns. Gradual change has not worked because his identity as someone who is out of shape is stronger than his desire to change. The destruction of this identity requires something more extreme, perhaps committing to a public physical challenge that would be humiliating to fail, perhaps hiring a coach expensive enough that quitting would mean significant financial loss, perhaps documenting the entire process publicly so that retreat would mean public failure. The old identity must be made untenable, burned to the ground, so that the only path forward is the creation of something new. The space between the destruction of the old self and the establishment of the new self is the most dangerous phase of transformation. You have dismantled your old identity, your old patterns, your old comfortable certainties, but you have not yet built something solid to replace them. This is the void, the chaos, the period where you feel like you are nobody, where your old self-image is gone but your new one has not yet solidified. Most people who attempt transformation quit in this phase because the discomfort is unbearable. They reach for the familiar patterns, rebuild the old identity, return to the comfortable mediocrity they know. The dominant individual understands that this void is not a bug, but a feature of genuine transformation. You must be willing to exist in uncertainty, to be undefined, to not know who you are for a period of time. This requires faith, not religious faith necessarily, but faith in the process. Faith that if you continue taking the right actions consistently, a new identity will emerge that is stronger, clearer, and more aligned with your actual potential than the comfortable fiction you destroyed. During this phase, you must become almost mechanical in your execution. You cannot rely on motivation because motivation is tied to identity, and your identity is in flux. You cannot rely on feeling like the new person because you do not yet feel like the new person. You only feel like nobody, or like an imposter playing a role. Instead, you rely on systems, on predetermined behaviors, on external structures that ensure you continue taking the right actions even when every part of you wants to return to the familiar. You wake at the same time every day and execute your morning routine regardless of how you feel. You go to the gym or run or train even when you do not want to because the action is on the calendar and the calendar does not negotiate. You do the work that builds your skills and advances your projects even when it feels pointless because the system demands it. You are not trying to feel motivated. You are creating evidence through repeated action that you are the kind of person who does these things. Identity follows behavior, not the reverse. Gradually, through thousands of repetitions, the new patterns become automatic. The behaviors that felt forced and artificial become natural. The person you were pretending to be becomes who you actually are. This is not because you convinced yourself of a new story, but because you built a new reality through action. You are no longer someone trying to be disciplined. You are someone who is disciplined, provably, because discipline is what you do daily. You are no longer someone who wants to be competent. You are competent, demonstrably, because you have logged the hours and built the skills. This new self is anti-fragile because it is not based on belief or feeling or identity in the psychological sense. It is based on behavior, on results, on evidence that cannot be argued with. When someone challenges you or criticizes you, it does not shake you because you know what you have done, what you can do, what you have built. Your confidence is not the fake confidence of positive thinking or self-affirmation. It is the real confidence that comes from having tested yourself repeatedly and discovered you are capable of more than you thought possible. The man who has destroyed his weak self and built something stronger through this process can never be destroyed by others because there is nothing for them to attack. The usual weapons people use against each other, shame, doubt, criticism, exclusion, are ineffective against someone who has already subjected himself to harsher judgment than any external critic could deliver. He has already acknowledged his weaknesses more honestly than his enemies could expose them. He has already pushed himself harder than any external pressure could push him. He has already faced his deepest fears in the process of transformation, so there are no hidden vulnerabilities to exploit. This is true dominance, not the dominance of controlling others, but the dominance of such complete self-mastery that you become immune to the control others might seek to exert. You do not need their approval, so they cannot manipulate you with praise or criticism. You do not need their resources, so they cannot control you with money or access. You do not fear their judgment, so they cannot limit you with social pressure. You are free in the deepest sense of the word, not because you have rejected all connection or responsibility, but because you have built yourself into someone who chooses his connections and responsibilities from a position of strength rather than need. The irony of this path is that by becoming less needful of others, you often become more valuable to them. The person who is desperate for approval is repellent. The person who is indifferent to it is magnetic. The person who needs the job will take any terms. The person who has optionality can negotiate from strength. The person who fears conflict will be pushed around. The person who is comfortable with conflict rarely has to engage in it because others sense his willingness and boundaries. Strength attracts opportunity. Weakness attracts exploitation. But none of this happens by accident or through wishful thinking. It happens through the deliberate application of the ruthless strategies outlined in this manifesto, maintained consistently over years, not abandoned when results are not immediate. It happens through the courage to destroy the comfortable, familiar version of yourself and build something harder, clearer, and more capable in its place. It happens through thousands of small decisions to choose the difficult path, to maintain your standards when it would be easier to compromise, to do the work when no one is watching, to keep building even when progress is not visible. The destination is not some fixed state of perfection or complete dominance. It is the continuous process of becoming more capable, more clear-sighted, more sovereign over your own life. Each time you face a challenge and overcome it through discipline rather than luck, you build evidence of your capability. Each time you maintain your boundaries against pressure to compromise, you strengthen your resolve. Each time you do what you said you would do, especially when it is difficult, you build trust with yourself, which is the foundation of all genuine confidence. The world will not make this easy. Most people will not understand what you are doing or why. Some will actively oppose you because your transformation implies judgment of their choice to remain comfortable. Your own mind will resist, presenting thousands of justifications for why you should quit, compromise, or settle. The path of dominance is lonely because excellence is rare, and those who pursue it cannot be stopped to accommodate those who do not share the commitment. But if you have the clarity to see through the comfortable lies, the courage to destroy what you must destroy within yourself, and the discipline to build what must be built, you will discover something remarkable. You become dangerous to control, difficult to defeat, and impossible to destroy through external force. Not because you are invulnerable to harm, but because you have already done to yourself what your enemies might hope to do to you. You have tested yourself and discovered you can endure. You have faced your weaknesses and eliminated them. You have built capabilities that cannot be taken away. This is the ultimate fruit of the art of dominance. Not power over others, though that may come as a consequence, but absolute sovereignty over yourself. The only dominion that truly matters. The only power that cannot be stripped away by circumstance, by enemies, or by time. The man who achieves this has won the only war that matters. The war against his own limitations, his own excuses, his own weak self. And having won that war, he discovers that external battles become simple, not because enemies are less formidable, but because he has become more so. The choice before you is simple but not easy. Continue as you are, comfortable but limited, or begin the violent work of transformation that will make you unrecognizable to your current self. Most will choose comfort. They will read these words, feel momentarily inspired, and return to their familiar patterns. A few will begin the work, but quit when it becomes difficult. When the void between the old self and new self becomes uncomfortable. When maintaining the discipline requires sacrifice they are not willing to make. But some small number will read this, recognize the truth in it, and make the decision that changes everything. They will conduct the brutal inventory of themselves and face what they see without flinching. They will identify the patterns that must die and create the pressure that will kill them. They will endure the void of transition without retreating to familiar comfort. They will build the new self through thousands of repeated actions, even when those actions feel mechanical and meaningless. And they will emerge from this process transformed, unrecognizable, dominant in the truest sense. If you are among this number, know this. The path is exactly as difficult as it appears, and the rewards are greater than you can imagine from your current position. The person you will become has capabilities you currently do not believe possible. The life you will build will seem like fantasy from where you stand now. But none of it happens through wanting or wishing or hoping. It happens through the ruthless application of these principles, maintained with religious devotion, practiced with monk-like discipline, pursued with warrior-like commitment. The art of dominance is not a set of tricks or techniques for manipulating others. It is the comprehensive science of self-mastery, applied systematically until you become someone who cannot be controlled, cannot be defeated from outside because you have already conquered yourself from within. Begin this work today, not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect, not when you feel ready. Begin with brutal honesty about where you are. Continue with ruthless action toward where you must go, and persist until the transformation is complete, until you have destroyed the weak self and built in its place something unbreakable. This is the path. These are the principles. The rest is execution.